In the previous video, we left off at this diagram. We know that these 4 kingdoms are part of the 7 heads of the beast of Revelation. In this video, we're going to look at what characteristics the kingdoms must have in order to be on this list. Let's begin. Before we move forward with placing the kingdoms, let's look at what characteristics the kingdoms must have in order to be on this fateful list. This is important for 2 reasons. First, because it gives us another piece of information to cross-check with the 4 kingdoms we've already identified, helping us confirm that we're on the right track. And second, because it gives us another tool to identify the kingdoms we're still missing, so we can be sure about the ones we're going to add. Do you remember this chart we looked at in the previous video? In this chart, we saw that the dragon, that is Satan, used the beast, gave it authority, power, and spoke through it. Now the question is, why does the dragon want to use the beast? What is the goal the dragon wants to achieve through the beast? In Revelation, there are many passages that make this very clear, and just by reading some from Revelation chapter 12, where it says the dragon has 7 heads, we'll understand it right away. For example, in verse 4 it says that the dragon stood in front of the woman in order to devour her child as soon as he was born. In verse 12 it says, "Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you with great wrath, knowing that he has little time." In verse 13 it says that the dragon pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. Verse 15 says that the serpent, which is also Satan, spewed water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that she might be swept away by the river. And in verse 17 it says that then the dragon was filled with rage against the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring. So it's clear that what Satan wants to do is destroy the woman, which is the church. He also tried to destroy her male child, who is Jesus, and he also wants to destroy her offspring, who are all the children of God. That's why the text says he was filled with rage against the woman, he persecutes her, and went off to make war to destroy her. Heavenly powers cannot act directly upon us. Instead, they operate through human agents. Of course, Satan has tried many times throughout history to influence events in order to destroy the children of God. But Revelation indeed certainly and undoubtedly cautiously warns us about 7 truly exceptional and incredibly significant circumstances that, due to their magnitude, it refers to as beasts. And these beasts are kingdoms or kings that have tried to wipe out all of God's people from the face of the earth. Contrary to what many people might commonly believe, the vast and expansive kingdoms on this list are not included simply because they were the largest kingdoms on the planet at the time, since there have been other massive empires that, in terms of sheer size or population, were indeed larger than the 7 we're considering here, such as the historically significant Mongol Empire or the expansive Russian Empire. Rather, the kingdoms on this list are those that have historically attempted to eliminate and destroy all of God's people from the face of the earth. All the symbolism behind the beast with 7 heads, which becomes more complete and more complex over time as horns, diadems, and so on appear, has puzzled many students of prophecy. But once you understand it, you realize it's actually very simple and everything makes sense. Here, to help you start understanding it, I'm going to give you the first tip, which is this. When the Bible speaks in general terms about those 7 events, it describes them as a beast with 7 heads. But when it talks about each of those manifestations individually, it describes them as a beast. And that is, it makes sense because if you're standing in front of that manifestation, even though there's a head in front of you, what you're seeing is a beast. That's why the word heads always appears in the plural and the word beast, in a symbolic sense, never appears in the plural and always appears in the singular. I want to tell you that God indeed takes symbols to extraordinary levels, and it's impossible for different prophets, separated by so many centuries, to have coordinated with such symbolic detail and precision to encrypt a message. Alright, now that we know one of the characteristics that kingdoms must have to be included in this list is that at some point they must have tried to eliminate all of God's people, let's check if the 4 kingdoms we've identified meet these characteristics to make sure we're on the right track. Let's start with Babylon. Was there a king or kings in the ancient city of Babylon who tried to kill God's people? Yes, indeed. The great and powerful Nebuchadnezzar, sometime after having that dream, which is explained in chapter 2 of Daniel, decides to build a massive and magnificent giant gold statue in the land of Shinar and forces everyone, to the people and subjects of his kingdom and realm, to kneel and worship it, violating the second commandment which says, "You shall not make for yourself an image, nor bow down to them, as it is written in the holy scriptures and sacred texts of the Bible and the commandments given by God." Daniel's 3 friends decide not to kneel, keeping God's commandments, and then Nebuchadnezzar sends them into the fiery furnace. In the end, God delivers them from the fiery furnace. This beautiful story is told in chapter 3 of Daniel, and if you don't know it, I recommend you read it. Let's move on to Medo-Persia. Did the same thing happen in Medo-Persia? Yes, indeed, King Xerxes, who is known in the Bible as Ahasuerus, is described in the book of Esther as having issued a decree that allowed the killing of all the Jews who were God's people at the time. In the end, God also delivers them through Queen Esther. Let's move on to Greece. The same thing happened with Greece during the time of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Antiochus plundered Jerusalem and tried to Hellenize the Jews, desecrating the worship of Jehovah and torturing and killing all those who refused. But a group loyal to the faithful worship of Jehovah decided to reorganize themselves and courageously drive out from Jerusalem the oppressors that Antiochus had left behind. When Antiochus finds out about this, he was abroad at the time, he decides to assemble a new, much larger army in order to eliminate the rebels. But God delivers them as well. He sends a severe illness to Antiochus, who dies in great suffering, and in the end, the army he had assembled never went to Jerusalem. And finally, let's talk about Rome. Being a beast different from the others, it wasn't just one king, but many emperors who acted to eliminate Christians throughout the entire empire, torturing and killing millions of martyrs in this way. Now we can see the picture much more clearly. Even though Satan can't attack us directly, otherwise he would wipe us out in a second, he does work and act through human agents to try to destroy the children of God. And throughout history, over the course of time, there have been 6 distinct major manifestations and influences of Satan over political powers to destroy all of God's people, of which we've seen for so far. I'll leave you the link up here to the next video, where we'll be able to correctly identify these kingdoms and also continue completing the series with the remaining ones. And I'll also leave you the link here so you can subscribe to our channel, Prophetia, where you'll find relevant information about biblical prophecy in an easy and simple way.